taking just names and context and turning them into engaged followers, customers, and maybe potential clients.
Welcome to the Howie and Beastmode podcast, where we discuss all things business, including growth, strategy, and execution, as well as personal and professional development. Let's join Howie and Beastmode in conversation.
Beastmode, I got bad news.
What is it?
The universe is on fire and we're all going to die.
I know. I feel it. It's wearing me out right now.
At least that's how it feels sometimes in business. You know, we go through, bad stuff happens in business or bad stuff happens in our individual career. And it feels like the universe is on fire and we're going to die. And so Tonight we want to kind of like rap about that a little bit. We both had plenty of opportunities in business and career where there have been setbacks.
Yeah. And the reason why we're talking about this is because right now it feels like my universe is on fire and we're all going to die. I mean, Howie, you're the one who verbalized that for me, but that is both the nonprofit that I founded and I lead and my business is, I mean, somebody's pouring gasoline on me right now is what it feels like. So,
well, I'm sure the audience would join me in saying, I'm sorry, it's a tough season for sure.
Oh, it's just a chapter. It's going to be over and whatever. Yeah.
Well, it will be. That's true. So
it's light and momentary.
Momentary troubles.
That's right.
So, we have these problems that happen. Last year during the pandemic, I lost my job. It took me 8.5 months to get a job, like 2 days shy of that or something. So 8.5 months is good. That was, kids in school, one of them, the kids in college, burning retirement. I mean, definitely feels like the world's on fire. I personally was working very hard to find a job and also working very hard to trust God and to recognize my ultimate source. So it's one of my recommendations when the universe feels like it's on fire and we're all going to die. I do recommend strongly that people, lean on God, trust God. We'll get into some other, crunchy tactics and good stuff here. But you kind of inspired me with some comments you made about foundations. And so I thought I would throw that out there for people that might be a blessing to. Hopefully that won't trigger too many people.
Yeah. I mean, you have hope in something. So you're either going to have hope in yourself or you're going to have hope in, a higher authority, whether it's God or whether it's somebody else. But, or sometimes, I mean, quite frankly, you can be your own God if you have hope in yourself. And that's okay. We're not judging. But I think that's a great place to start. I mean, I think I'm right there too. You got to find a place of hope, a place of consolence, but I know for me is I got to go back to the foundation. Okay. So everything's on fire. I don't need to be running up to the roof. I need to be going down to the bottom to find out where's the source, where's the issue. And a lot of it's kind of self-reflecting, self-awareness. Am I part of the problem as a leader? The answer is yes. If there's an issue, I'm part of the problem. And then really going from there. A lot of times we can get stuck, there's a fire and we're trying to, put out a little skirmish over here whenever there's a real issue. And so finding the real issue, finding the root, finding the source. Can I put this out? Who can I call to help me? I need brothers in arms, sisters in arms.
Yeah, I think the nice thing about, because we had a session tonight of chatting, I think if you can have somebody to talk to, I think you probably, and someone might say, I'm not sure who to call, But I really feel that if you thought about it, you could find somebody to call. Most people could. And so the ability to talk about it a little bit can sometimes lessen the burden. I have a funny thing with my wife that, and it took me years to recognize this, but I would have this big complex problem. Sometimes it's a little bit of work to tell her the backstory and all that. But if I can tell her, if I can get it out of my head and get it off of my chest, I actually feel 70%, 75% better. I know I still have the root issue to deal with, and she may or may not have an idea for me, right? Like tonight, Beastmode and I were talking. I don't think I gave him any good ideas, but the sounding board can be nice. But sometimes they will. Sometimes they'll literally have an idea for you as well. So, you know, I think you owe it to yourself when the world is on fire and you think everybody's going to die. I think you kind of owe it to yourself to find somebody to share with. And what's nice is then they'll feel comfortable. Jordan B. Peterson talks about this. Something about like, it's one of his rules. Give to or ask somebody for a favor so you could do them a favor. I don't know. Anyway, there's something about that sharing that's really powerful with us. You know, so find your tribe, find people you can talk to. I think that could be pretty therapeutic as part of your process. I know we haven't talked about solving the problems yet, guys, but the problem is that you're going to deal with a lot of initial blowback from your own psychology when you face that business disaster or business setback or career problem or whatever it is, conflict, whatever it is. So we're trying to give you some thoughts because Beastmode and I relate strongly to the emotional burden of this stuff. And so we want to give you a few thoughts here unapologetically about managing you in the process.
Yes. And I couldn't express that anymore because sometimes it's before I can even solve a problem, before I can even start putting the fire on, can I assess the damage? Can I get a vantage point? Can I just, where am I going to start? You know, if you start just running around pouring buckets of water everywhere, it doesn't mean you're productive. It means you're pouring water everywhere, you know? And so sometimes it's, take that 20 minutes, have a conversation with somebody, verbalize it, get a direction. Okay, you know, somebody listens to you and says, hey, this will start here, start putting this fire out. And maybe that's the source, you know, or they just encourage you and say, I don't have any help, but I can encourage you. I can say I'm on your team, you know. Just knowing somebody's in your corner, that's a great avenue.
It's great avenue.
For me, I know that, you know, both issues with JL and with cleanup, you know, I didn't start these issues, you know, but I do know, and that's a lot of these issues that we come across. I didn't start it. It should not be my problem. Like somebody, you know, there's an arson that set my world on fire. You know, it'd be different if I set my own world on fire, but somebody set mine on fire. And so just coming to that realization that that's okay. That it's an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to learn. And so just trying a perspective shift, you know, and don't give up. Don't give up. Some people will just stand there. My world's on fire. There's nothing I can do. I'm overwhelmed. If that's the case, then you need to reach out to somebody immediately. Yeah, we can be that, you know, but you need to have somebody.
Yep. Good. Yep. Trust somebody enough to hear, you know, it's not like you have to share every little granular detail of your failure if you have an uncomfortable situation, but being able to share at some level, I think it can be really therapeutic. Another thing to do when you have that initial, so there's an interpretation. If you guys, it's really important not to pitch us a little bit here for a second, but if you listen multiple weeks, you'll kind of see some certain patterns that build on each other. So I'm about to reference one from several weeks ago, and I'll give a little snapshot, but you can go, I think it's called Thrashing is Normal or something like that.
Thrashing about that.
Yeah, it's a really thrashing about. Go check that out because it's a really critical topic, but I'll kind of touch on it really quick, which is sometimes this problem that you think the world is on fire is the thrashing of progress. It's just normal stuff, right? Whether it's, maybe it's an employee issue or whatever it may be, a client issue, or I don't know, product issue, whatever. Some thrashing is going to be normal in business.
Yeah, it's expected.
Yeah, but we just kind of like, especially if you're making forward motion, right? Typically, I think there might be a little bit less thrashing for people who aren't growing or who aren't trying to grow or who aren't pushing forward, because you're not going to meet any resistance, right? But I feel like that thrashing moment happens. So I think we interpret it as we're dying, and we're not. We're just, it's kind of like if the little caterpillar doesn't have that little thrashing, he can't get out of the shell. So you can't see when you're in the shell that you're actually becoming a butterfly. So that pressure is part of the process, Yeah.
So. And if you leave your butterfly reference, if you leave that cocoon too early, then you're not going to make it. You're not going to be developed. You're not going to be able to sustain your new life. I love that terminology of taking new ground. What did you say? No, that's not what you said. You said something
like pushing forward or whatever.
Yeah, pushing
normal
forward.
Resistance from pushing forward.
Yeah, and so I mean, there's a refinement process. We all want to be refined and be polished gold, polished whatever. Well, to go through that, there's a refinement process, and it's uncomfortable. It's hot. There's a lot of things going on. There's a separation. There's a process of removing things that are not needed. And so if you're going through this, I mean, this is similar to when we talked about stretching for growth, is identifying early on, I'm stretching, it's uncomfortable. Okay. But if I can turn it and say, it's because I'm taking new ground, it's because I'm doing this, it's because I'm doing this, this is typical, this is normal, and just let it happen, then there's the opportunity to come out on the other side.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, a couple nights ago, Saturday night or Sunday night, I don't know, I'm doing bench press, and I had my right arm collapsed. I don't do a machine. I do full, and I'm alone.
Yeah.
I lift heavy-ish.
You got a Harley.
Heavy for me. Yeah. That's all I got. Got the dog. My dog's name is Harley. It's like I had that collapse, and I felt, some pain, and it almost hit me. And it's heavy enough that, that could have been a bad bruise or more. And God forbid it landed here instead of here. I mean, I don't know what would happen if it landed here, to be honest with you. And so it scared me, and I was able to have enough strength to deflect it off of me. But it's like, that's a moment of growth though. When you lift weights to the point of muscular failure, that is part of the growth process. So why the heck do we think that when we go to school and we take a test and we miss some of the questions, why do we think that we didn't make progress? I mean, we got part of them right, or why do we think that if we're trying to, cold call, and we have, 97 people not pick up, and we have, technically those are failures, right? But the 3 that picked up, those are successes. And even, by the way, within that, statistics are that between 0 and 1 of those 3 will actually take a discovery call later with you and talk to you, right? And so it's like, technically, failure is part of your success process. Failure is part of your thrashing process. So it's like, if I stopped lifting weights because I dropped it, because I had a failure, a muscular, failure, because I was an idiot and I pushed myself by 1 too many, apparently, which you don't even know. That's a problem. Like in the iteration process of business, you don't know what's too many or too little. It's a learning, and I think so beast mode, I feel like we don't give ourselves the grace that I might give to you or you might give to me, but we don't give ourselves that grace.
Yeah, I know that for sure. I mean, that really speaks to me, because we can be so hard on ourselves and say, Howie would not have made this mistake, or somebody else wouldn't have made the mistake that I've made, or maybe they would have recognized it before it became a mistake, or they would have caught this employee issue before, the world's on fire and it's burning down, but that's okay. I mean, from my perspective, and again, I'm in the middle of it. So this is not something that I'm talking about and trying to remember something from years ago. It is literally happening as we speak. Mm-hmm. And so again, from my perspective, I'm going to first foundations. I'm going to priorities. What absolutely has to get done. Okay. I'm reassessing everything. Okay. Re-looking at everything. Maybe there was things on here that we're doing that are fluff, that don't need to be done. This is an opportunity to find it. There's also an opportunity to find out, is there something wrong with my process? You know, I have a process, I have an SOP. Is there something wrong with my SOPs that's causing failure? You know, but I'm also getting down, and now I'm having to look at things. You know, as a leader, this is an opportunity to get in firsthand and decide, you know, okay, now I'm looking at it. Okay. Now, maybe there was issues that were brought up, maybe there were red flags, but now, okay, now I have an opportunity to look at things firsthand, get my hands dirty in areas that I normally don't, you know, which is frustrating. That's part of the reason why it feels like the world's burning, is because this isn't what I want to do. I want to be doing the fun stuff that makes me happy, that I really enjoy. And so it feels like the world's burning whenever what it's doing is I'm, you know, re-leveling the foundation. Yeah. You know, and it can only be done by the leader. It can't be done by a subordinate. You know, whatever you're feeling, it can only be done by you. Having somebody else come in and solve your problem is not going to work. There's no growth in that. You know, and I actually had a little 30-second clip that I put out the other day. There can be no growth, zero, without change. Something must change for growth to happen. And if you think that you can grow without something changing, send me an example. I guarantee you there's not one. You can't have a better eating habit without stop eating something. You can't have a better relationship with a spouse or somebody without choosing a different task. You can't get a better education without, you have to change something. You're never going to grow unless somebody changes. Mm-hmm. Good. And there's an opportunity for sometimes we wait for an external desperation before we change. And oftentimes we have the opportunity to make a change internally beforehand, and we don't. And so it requires external circumstances to force a change that must be done.
That just happened to me. I mean, I would have stayed at that company that I was laid off from much longer, but because they were very nervous because of COVID, which it's hard to not be at some level sympathetic to that, you know. Still don't like it, but it's you know, it's defensible. But I would have stayed there longer, and it was time to go. And I already kind of knew it, you know, I did. I love the people, by the way, but it was time to go. And yet I wouldn't have gone had it not been a layoff situation. So yeah, I think sometimes we need the negative stimulus to happen. Some of that, like we talked about, pushing forward and building things, and that causes disruption, which causes resistance and that pressure, you know. Sometimes you need that pressure to redirect you. You know, for example, if I'm your client and I say, I'm not getting the outcomes that I want, you know, then that's really good feedback, you know. And if I fire you because I'm not getting the outcomes that I want, then it's going to be painful, you know, but you're going to get to hear that, and you're going to get to think about that and think about whatever it is. Or if, employees are key ones. I realize, so we have to think about how do we mitigate that situation, you know, or we have, we lost a deal, we lost a current customer, you know, or we lost a prospecting situation. You know, I have a deal right now at work, which I feel is kind of random. Like, and I'm real new as a sales manager. So I wasn't involved in it, but I feel like the outcome is kind of uncertain, and I don't have a good feel for it because I wasn't involved and because I wasn't coaching the team to better define the deal and to guide the customer. So we're in that 50-50. And I don't like to be in that situation. I have no idea where we're going to land. And I actually have two like that right now simultaneously. Because again, that's happens when you're hired at the, at the 11th hour, and stuff, it's not like you start with no pipeline. So you have deals. But we're going to learn, we're going to learn from those situations, and hopefully we'll win them both. If we lose one of them, then that's going to suck, but I will diagnose why we lost. And just like we talked about with your situation, if a deliverable wasn't what it had to be for somebody, it's like, okay, well, we'll diagnose that and we'll think about how can we improve from that. Or maybe it was just the wrong fit or whatever. But I think, we learned so much from that. It's just that it's really hard. That's why we started with the psychological impact on everybody on the call, because we know that there's so much psychology for you to handle and process to ever find the lesson. But I think at this point in the podcast, I want to remind people, because I'm just piggybacking what Beastmode said, but there are lessons in there for us. And those lessons, you have to believe those lessons can be very positive for you.
Yeah. I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention this point as well. And it is, don't waste time assigning blame at all. Too often we want to find whose fault it is and put blame on them. It's your fault. This is, my world's on fire because of you, whatever it is. But there's a lot of time wasted, and that doesn't solve any problems. It doesn't put the fire out. It doesn't make it go away. It doesn't make the fire retreat, and it just wastes time. And I'm thinking of, if there's a gunshot wound coming into the trauma center, they're not asking, who shot him. It doesn't matter. What's the immediate thing? We need to put pressure on it. We need to fight back. Yeah. We need to fight back against the gunshot wound. We need to start taking countermeasures. And we need to, okay, what do we need to focus on first? I don't need to worry about, is he hungry? That's supplemental. We need to go to the nuts and bolts. What needs to be done first? Prioritize our schedule. I can't solve this on my own. I need help. So there's just those steps, and start thinking about it in that terminology and that type of mindset.
Yes. Good. Yeah, don't blame. That's good. A couple other tips. Obviously, I have found many times if I sleep the next morning, things are much more clear, and there's a reset approach that happens with that. It will kind of come back when I start to remember, but it's a little lighter, I notice, in the morning if I sleep. So that's good news. What else can they do to kind of process the problem or the reaction to the problem, or because we're not really in order here today, we're just kind of roundtabling.
I think setting an expectation. Sometimes you walk up, especially as a leader or a manager or things like that. Sometimes you walk upon and the building's on fire, the world's on fire. Well, it's unrealistic that I'm going to put this all out today. So it's okay to go to bed. It's okay to get some sleep and reset and regroup. So setting those expectations, it's okay. And I think that's realistic. It didn't just happen overnight, so it's not going to go away overnight. But I can course correct. I can do things. So focus on what can I do, what's realistic, get the necessary people involved.
Yep. Also, I think if they try to write it down, I think that's big, because in your mind, sometimes things are kind of blown out and they're like this, they're really, really big, and and sometimes the things that we worry about are kind of vague as well. So I think and I think we may have talked about this. We were talking about this before the call. can't remember when we may have just covered this a little while ago, but we also run a kind of a business support group. And I think we did talk about it in the group, but I don't remember how recently we did on the podcast. But yeah, so we talked about telling you guys to make sure to write down these issues too. Like, write it down in detail. A, it's very therapeutic. Jordan B. Peterson talks about that. But also just B, you can kind of get a little bit of a sense of how to fix it once you write it down.
Yeah. You can realize that, once you start writing down everything, you realize that the world really isn't on fire, and that you're not going to die, and that there is a way out, that there is a lifeline. And so that's the biggest benefit from writing it down or from verbalizing it to somebody else, is to have that self-awareness, that aha moment of it will be okay.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be okay today or tomorrow, but it will be okay.
Another tip that I'll throw in there is working out. You don't want to drop weights on yourself, but go for a run, go for a walk. I don't think just doing push-ups is enough. I don't think think 90 seconds of something is enough. I think you want to give yourself 25 minutes, 20 to 35, 40 minutes to do something. Maybe you're in a situation you can go swimming if you're a member somewhere, or you maybe have a pool, but lift weights, turn on some music, distract yourself a little bit. But working out we all know that there's chemicals released that are very helpful in that process. So get some exercise. That's another good way to clear your head.
Yeah, it's really just all about changing the topic. Whatever it is. I know sometimes I like to have hammock time. I have a portable hammock that it reduces down to like this big, and I can carry it in a backpack or whatever. And when you're in one of those moments, okay, that's it. I'm getting hammock time. I'm going to read for 20 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever. And problem's still going to be there, and it's going to be there. And that may be a real, I don't know if it touches anybody like it touches me, but when you realize that if I worked on this another 30 minutes, it's still going to be there. If I take a 30-minute break, it's still going to be there, versus if I don't, it's still going to be there. And just giving yourself that freedom of that it's okay. It doesn't have to be gone immediately. So.
I think, I want to encourage you guys that there is a solution to your problem. There is a solution. And so just because you don't know what that is right now, you might be in that thrashing about process, which is, it's pretty normal that you don't know what the solution is. Honestly, you wouldn't be as upset as you are right now if you already had the solution, probably. Chances are. So just know that there is a solution. Someone has probably solved that problem before. Google it, for heaven's sakes. Beastmode and I would both say pray about it. There's a lot of angles. Ask a friend, ask a mentor, text a former boss. What would you do in this situation? Blah, 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 blah. But you know what? A lot of them you're just gonna have to gut it out and figure it out too. It may not be a super easy solution, but once you take your nap and you work out and you get your hammock time, you come back to this sucker, you're gonna have a little bit more clarity to deal with it. But I guarantee you, if you'll dive into the issue when you do come back from your break, you're gonna find an issue. You're gonna be able to figure this thing out. You just can't right now. And the problem with human consciousness, and by the way, I'm not a psychologist, but I noticed this with me and I noticed it with others, is that we tend to have whatever we're feeling right now, we tend to project that forward into eternity. Like it's always going to be this way, right?
Yeah.
I'm never going to be successful, or I'm never going to solve this problem, or I will always have this happen, or whatever. We tend to perpetuate things because I think we're pattern creatures. So I get it, right? We patternize things. That's why habits are very powerful. Most of us run, 80% of what we do on a habit, whether it's putting on our shoes, you don't really think about that. So we are kind of this perpetual habit creatures. And so we live based on patterns. The problem is if you allow the mentality that I'm always going to be, a failure, or I'm always going to have this problem, you're projecting forward, you're prophesying a bad future, and you don't have enough information about the future. All you know is that you've got a problem right now. But our mind plays tricks on us when we think it's always going to be that way. So if you're having those thoughts, just know that that's a lie, but it's a common one. You're not the first person who ever projected a bad future, but it is not true. There's nothing in the future that's standing there pulling you along with fishing line saying you are going to be pulled into this bad future, right? I mean, you're the one that is in the driver's seat, and you have a certain amount of control over that outcome. I guarantee you, though, if you quit and if you stop, then you are a little bit perpetuating some of that. The one thing you have control over is really your attitude and your effort. So don't quit.
Yeah, so good. And oftentimes we think, I thought I was past this. I didn't think I'd have to do this again. Well, you know what? I think we've all gone through a phase where we were healthy, we were in great shape. And you know what? If you stop, working out, if you stop pushing, you don't have to try to find those pounds. Those pounds will find you. You don't have to try to find, being out of shape. It just finds you. And so understanding that going against that grain, going against that norm is abnormal, because our world, our circumstances are natural. If you do nothing, it will begin to cave in. So pushing back is normal.
What else do we got?
I think we've covered a lot. I think
that's a lot.
They may need to take a hammock break or whatever and go think about everything that we just said. Because it was rapid fire.
I just want to say, though, this is so
fresh.
This is an important topic, but it's also a very fun title.
Yes. Yes. Give us the title again.
We'll have to. You guys. The title is "The Universe is on Fire and We're All Going to Die."